The smoke of Satan.
Hello and welcome to the Smoke of Satan. My name is Joseph Cillo Jr. I'm a writer of edgy Catholic fiction. And I've written novels. I got my novel, my thriller, When the Wood is Dry, an edgy Catholic thriller. A graphic novel, comic book, Blind Prophet, and my Christmas story, Merry Friggin' Christmas. An edgy Christmas comedy, a Christmas gift for atheists, which comes in a naughty edition or the standard edition. Naughty edition has worse language. Basically, standard edition is a clever way that I kind of obscure most of the bad language. It still maybe has a little bit, but you know what? It's an edgy story. Okay, so we would like to talk today. We are up to episode 12 of The Smoke of Satan, which is the Modernist as Reformer. Now, this is a very important episode, okay? In this episode, we kind of conclude Pius X's elucidation of what he thinks the Modernist Heresy is, what it all is, how it all ties together. And he spent all this time in this document talking about what it is. Now, he also gives his opinion of what it is as he's going. But after this, he's going to talk more about where he thinks it comes from and what can be done about it. So it's kind of a shift here, okay? And this is where we're going to sum up the entire thing. So we're going to do the section on the Modernist as Reformer and all of his conclusions about all of the previous episodes talking about this Modernist heresy. But first, we always want to remind you about where the root of the problem is. And this is in the traditional theology. So what Thomas Aquinas came up with, that the modernist people have kind of abandoned and changed. And this is where the whole thing starts, I believe. Okay, so we want to always remind you about what is the proper way to think as a Catholic before we get into the improper things that we believe the modernists are doing. So you're not confused to think that somehow they're right. Okay? That's not my intention. Okay, so St. Thomas Aquinas said we have two sources of knowledge. The one was determined by the ancient Greeks, basically Aristotle, that school of philosophy where he said that there are senses, and we take our information from our senses, we apply our reason to them, and we get knowledge, and we have a natural end. But that wasn't adequate to explain everything, so St. Thomas Aquinas said we also have revelation directly from God. So we have God as a source of knowledge, which through revelation, and we have a supernatural end where we will be judged. Okay? Now, the Nouvelle Theology, this is what the modernists kind of did with this, is they said, we don't need this extra order of grace, St. Thomas, thank you very much. We say that grace perfects nature, and faith is the perfection of reason, and theology is the perfection of philosophy. So we don't need this. So we're going to take that out. And we're going to just talk about senses, and then we have reason, and grace is kind of a form of that. And then we're going to have our supernatural end and our natural end are all kind of combined. And this is the one source of knowledge coming through our senses. And we're going to reread the Fathers, the documents of the Church, through this lens, which is a modernist agnostic lens where we don't have direct revelation from God. And they called this ressourcement and the Nouvelle Theologie. And what you get when you do this is not the same as what St. Thomas Aquinas came up with. And what St. Thomas Aquinas came up with was consistent with what the church had always believed. It was a refinement on it, and a deeper understanding of it. But this new way of looking at things, you come up with different answers, which allows for old heresies to raise their heads again and kind of like a hydra out there, sprout up everywhere. And that's kind of what we're seeing in the church, because we've stopped this battle. So St. Pius X wrote this document, Pascendi Dominici Gregis, where he outlined everything he thought the modernists were all about, and then he said what we're going to do about it, and all those steps which we will talk about in the last episode of this series, they're not enacted anymore. We're not fighting it. We gave up. These are the guys who run the church now, the ones who believe exactly what St. Pius X was saying we shouldn't believe. Now, St. Pius X is a saint. Okay? He's not just, some old discredited pope. So we are not, we abandoned his battle, and we said, okay, we're going to allow this thinking in our church, especially in Vatican II, where some of these theologians who ran the roost there were sanctioned by the likes of Pius X and Pius XII and previous popes in the early 20th century. So these guys were on the outs, and they were allowed in, and they kind of changed everything. Now we're going to talk today about how the Modernist as Reformer, and we're going to move on to that right now. So the Modernist as Reformer. Now the problem is they want to reform everything, and this is basically what Pius X is saying here. So here's a quote from Pius X. From all that has preceded, some idea may be gained of the reforming mania which possesses them. In all Catholicism, there is absolutely nothing on which it does not fasten. So they just want to reform everything. This is like, when you have this progressive movement, which was also popular in the early 20th century, they want to reform. They want progress for the sake of progress, change for the sake of change. They just want to change everything. Now, this is not the Catholic faith, right? The Catholic faith is handed down from Jesus Christ through the apostles, and it doesn't change, right? That's the beauty of it. It's truth that doesn't change. It's the rock on which we base all of our beliefs, right? The rock doesn't change. But the modernist wants to reform everything, because it's exciting to reform stuff, isn't it? I mean, it's a little bit more, my job seems a little bit more important when I'm changing things rather than when I'm defending what already exists. All right, so let's move on. Reform of philosophy, okay? Especially in the seminaries. The scholastic philosophy is to be relegated to the history of philosophy among obsolete systems. Now, remember I talked to you about St. Thomas Aquinas? That's the scholastic philosophy. They're saying we got to throw that out. We got to say, well, you can kind of study it as a historical artifact, but it no longer applies. No, that's what we believe. Okay? The young men are to be taught modern philosophy, which alone is true and suited to the times in which we live. No. Right? No. All right. The modernist as reformer, the reform of theology. Okay? Rational theology is to have modern philosophy for its foundation, and positive theology is to be founded on the history of dogma. You see? Now, this is what they're doing with this modernist philosophy, which is at the base and root of the problem. History must be for the future, written and taught only according to their modern methods and principles. Dogmas and their evolution are to be harmonized with science and history. So you see what's going on here. they're diluting the faith and taking out the faith, basically, and saying what we want to believe in, what's material and what's rationalist. We're gonna make it so that our friends who are atheists and agnostics, they like us a little more. I don't understand it, right? Why would you do this? If you believe you have the truth, you don't do this. If you really are a Catholic and believe in the Catholic faith, you don't want to change it, right? It's the faith that came from Jesus. Okay? So we talked a good deal about history and what they want to do with history. They want to take out anything that's supernatural and say that was just some accretion from a distortion because of faith. And that's not, no, okay? All right. Let's see. All right. In the Catechism, no dogmas are to be inserted except those that have been duly reformed and are within the capacity of the people. Now, here you go again. These masterminds, they think we're smarter than everybody else. You won't be able to understand this one, so we're not going to put it in there. But that doesn't go in the Catechism. It's it's beyond your capacity. We're the ones who know better. And remember in the earlier episodes, we talked about this condescension of the philosophers that they say, well, the believers believe this stuff, but we know better. It's madness. We all have to believe the same thing. The shepherds have to believe what they're teaching the sheep. All right. Reform of worship. The number of external devotions is to be reduced, or at least steps must be taken to prevent their future increase. Though, indeed, some of the admirers of symbolism are disposed to be more indulgent on this head. Okay? So here we got external devotions. We want to reduce those. Why? Devotions are good, right? But you see, they believe in external faith. They believe in God speaking directly to us, these devotions, or we're speaking directly to God. And that doesn't fit with the rationalist model. Now, some people who like symbolism, they say, oh, you can do that as long as it's a symbol. As long as you don't believe it's real. No. All right. Ecclesiastical government requires to be reformed in all its branches. Now, here's where we get into them. We want to run things. Okay? We don't like being subject to authority. Obedience is a great virtue. That's one of the great virtues of the church. But they don't want to be obedient, right? They want to run it. Okay. Especially in its disciplinary and dogmatic parts. Its spirit with the public conscience, which is not wholly for democracy, it needs to be reformed. A share in ecclesiastical government should therefore be given to the lower ranks of the clergy and even to the laity. You hear them talking about doing this now, especially with Pope Francis. He wants to democratize the church. That's not what we have in the church, right? Authority should be decentralized. No, we have a pope, right? That's why we have clear teaching about what Catholicism is. The Roman congregations, and especially the Index and the Holy Office, are to be reformed. The ecclesiastical authority must change its line of conduct in the social and political world. No, it doesn't need to do that. While keeping outside political and social organization, it must adapt itself to those which exist in order to penetrate them with its spirit. And you see, this is the worldliness of that they want to integrate into the faith. Okay, so with regard to morals, they adopt the principle of the Americanists that the active virtues are more important than the passive, both in the estimation in which they must be held and in the exercise of them. Okay? Now, let's hear a little bit about what Pius X has to say about this, okay? Specifically about the Modernist Reformer here. The clergy are asked to return to their ancient lowliness and poverty, and in their ideas and action to be guided by the principles of modernism. And there are some who, echoing the teaching of their Protestant masters, would like the suppression of ecclesiastical celibacy. What is there left in the church which is not to be reformed according to their principles? Okay, so now basically we've got St. Pius X saying they want to reform everything. You are constantly hearing in the church people talking about celibacy being a problem. They're talking about making women priests, talking about doing all kinds of things that we never accepted in the church. And every time a pope comes out and says, no, we're not going to do that, they squawk, but then they regroup and they say, well, we're going to keep trying for it. Even when they keep closing the door on women's ordination. And Pope John Paul II pretty much closed that door pretty tightly. And they still want to do it. They don't give up. They just want to change. They want to change everything. Okay? Now, let's hear what he has to say about modernism and all the heresies. Now, this applies to all the previous episodes of the Smoke of Satan as well. Okay? It may be, venerable brethren, that some may think we have dwelt too long on this exposition of the doctrines of the modernists. But it was necessary both in order to refute their customary charge that we do not understand their ideas, and to show that their system does not consist in scattered and unconnected theories, but in a perfectly organized body, all the parts of which are solidly joined so that it is not possible to admit one without admitting all. Can anybody who takes a survey of the whole system be surprised that we should define it as the synthesis of all heresies? Okay? That is a pretty strong condemnation for this system of beliefs that is prevalent in the church today, that was being fought against by popes of old and has been accepted. There's been a change. And this is the smoke of Satan, the synthesis of all heresies in our church. And when we opened up the windows of the church, as St. John the 23rd said, we let this smoke in. And we're intoxicated by this smoke. And it's everywhere. And our priests are being taught this way in our seminaries. And we see the corruption in our church. It's everywhere. Okay? And it's bad. Not good. Not good at all. Okay. Let's go on. He's got a lot more to say. We're one to attempt the task of collecting all the errors that had been broached against the faith, and to concentrate the sap and substance of them all into one. He could not better succeed than the modernists have done. Nay, they have done more than this, for as we have already intimated, their system means the destruction not of the Catholic religion alone, but of all religion. With good reason do the rationalists applaud them, for the most sincere and frankest among the rationalists warmly welcome the modernists as their most valuable allies. Okay? Rationalists, when we're talking about rationalists, he's talking about atheists. He's talking about people who don't believe in God. Okay? And they love these guys because it means the destruction of religion. which is one of the goals of people who don't believe in God. Okay? Let's move on. These are very harsh condemnations, and it's harsh condemnations of what the church is today. Okay? This is not like, this is what he was fighting against. He's saying we can't let the church become this. And we did. And when did that happen? You know, we've got now, Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano out there saying we have to scrap the entire Vatican II. It's just easier just to get rid of it and go back to where we were before and then start over from there. And forget this sad chapter in the Catholic Church where we went in for this mess. Okay? I agree with that. Now, there may be some good things hidden away in Vatican II that you can tease out, and some people want to do that. That's kind of the Bishop Snyder approach, that he thinks that you can go and line out all the bad stuff. I don't think you can do it, but maybe you can. But something has to be done, right? Something has to be done. They surrendered, and we didn't know because we were just stupid lay people out here not paying attention and trusting our shepherds, and the shepherds have led us off a cliff. Okay? Here we go again. For let us return for a moment, venerable brethren, to that most disastrous doctrine of agnosticism. By it, every avenue that leads the intellect to God is barred, but the modernist would seek to open others available for sentiment and action. Vain efforts. For after all, what is sentiment but the reaction of the soul on the action of the intelligence or the senses? Take away the intelligence, and man, already inclined to follow the senses, becomes their slaves. Okay? He's saying the whole approach is wrong-headed. To start with agnosticism, you're going to become a slave to your senses. That's where it's going to lead you. And that's not where Jesus wants you to be. Okay? That's not the church he founded. Okay. If experiences have so much value in their eyes, why do they not attach equal weight to the experience that thousands upon thousands of Catholics have, that the modernists are on the wrong road? Okay? All right? We value everybody's experience. Everything's experience. My experience is you're completely wrong. You're leading us off a cliff. Does my experience count? It is perchance that all experiences, except those felt by the modernists, are false and deceptive. The vast majority of mankind holds and always will hold firmly that sentiment and experience alone, when not enlightened and guided by reason, do not lead to the knowledge of God. Okay? This is what most people believe in their own soul. It doesn't lead you to God. Just your sentiment and experience. You know, we need the revelation of God to us, you know, in the form of faith. It's mysterious. It's a little mysterious. It is. But things are mysterious, you know? So there's another criticism. Okay. Now he goes into some pantheism. Pantheism. He's got 3 big comments on pantheism here for you. For if all the intellectual elements, as they call them, of religion and are pure symbols, will not the very name of God or of divine personality be also a symbol? And if this be admitted, will not the personality of God become a matter of doubt and the way opened to pantheism. Okay? So, the name of God, God can't be a symbol. If God is a symbol, God, you end up with God as in everything, right? He's just a symbol, all right? And to pantheism, that other doctrine of the divine immanence leads directly. For does it, we ask, leave God distinct from man or not? If yes, in what does it differ from Catholic doctrine, and why reject external revelation? If no, we are at once in pantheism. Okay? So this divine immanence, if it's really God, what is the difference? Why do we reject external revelation? Why are we saying that it's something that's got to be immanent within the person if it is really coming from God, which is external? So he's calling out that little one branch of the modernists who believe that. And then the other branch doesn't believe that and believes it's inside of us, and it leads to pantheism. Okay. Now, the doctrine of immanence in the modernist acceptation holds and professes that every phenomenon of conscience proceeds from man as man. The rigorous conclusion from this is the identity of man with God, which means pantheism. Okay? So when you're talking only about man as man, and you're denying this external God, you're going to end up with this identity of man with God. So God is man. You kind of get to that point where you're in a pantheistic state where God's in everything. Okay? Science and faith. Let's talk a little bit about this. He's got several points he wants to make here. The same conclusion follows from the distinction modernists make between science and faith. The object of science, they say, is the reality of the knowable. The object of faith, on the contrary, is the reality of the unknowable. Now, what makes the unknowable unknowable is its disproportion with the intelligible, a disproportion which nothing whatever, even in the doctrine of the modernists, can suppress. Hence, the unknowable remains and will eternally remain unknowable to the believer as well as to the man of science. Therefore, if any religion at all is possible, it can only be the religion of an unknowable reality. And why this religion might not be that universal soul of the universe of which a rationalist speaks is something we do see. Okay, so we have here, what he's saying here is that when you try to box God up and say he's only in the unknowable, it's still unknowable. And he's not anywhere else. He's locked up over here. And if we have rationalist thinkers who say there's some kind of soul in the universe, even though they don't believe in God, well, why isn't that God? Right? So how is it different? How do we have something different than what the atheists have? The soul of the universe, right? So, okay? So, I think this is the last one where we just sum up everything. Certainly this suffices to show superabundantly by how many roads modernism leads to the annihilation of all religion. The first step in this direction was taken by Protestantism. The second is made by modernism. The next will plunge headlong into atheism. Okay? So that is our concluding remarks on the the elucidation here of of modernism by St. Pius X. And you can see he has such contempt for it. And yet, it's prevalent. It's everywhere in our church. Has this been renounced? Has Pascendi Dominici Gregis, have somebody said, all that stuff that Pius X was talking about in that encyclical, we're lining that out. That's not a problem anymore. When did that happen? Right? It's happened de facto, because we are not fighting this battle anymore. Okay? Not the mainstream of the church. They've accepted this kind of stuff. And they're out there saying all kinds of things that are not consistent with the traditional faith. Okay? Again, my name is Joseph Cillo Jr. We have another episode coming up, which is, let me get that for you. The next episode is the cause of modernism. Okay? So now we've elucidated what it is. Now he's going to say where he believes it comes from. And he doesn't believe it comes from a good place. Okay? He believes it comes from a place of pride. I'll give you a little hint, all right? Little spoiler there for you. It comes from a place of pride, okay, which is where most sin comes from, okay? So we will talk about that next time. That'll be episode 13. Again, my name is Joseph Cillo Jr. I've written books, When the Wood is Dry, Edgy Catholic Thriller, my graphic novel, Blind Prophet, comic book series. Check that out. Get episode 1 for free. You can get this one for free. The ebooks. And my Christmas book. Merry Freaking Christmas. A Christmas Gift for Atheists. Edgy Christmas comedy. It's kind of funny. Takes an atheist on a journey into the afterlife, which is kind of fun. Okay? Again, Joseph Cillo Jr., we will see you next time on The Smoke of Satan.